Jim Allister, it hasn't been well spent according to our audience. What do you think?
I absolutely agree with the audience. Much of it has been wasted, because you should ask yourself the question, is there a billion of legacy, lasting economic legacy from the peace funding? Certainly isn't, because most of it was wasted on froth. Still being wasted. Just recently, under the Peace 3 money, £10 million has been gifted with the imprimatur and approval of the Office of the Joint First Ministers to ex-prisoners groups, while in the first tranche of money, not a single penny to the real victims in this community. And that but typifies the waste, misdirection and misspend of much of the peace funding. What we needed in Northern Ireland from Europe was infrastructural spend under the cohesion funding, which we never got, which would have put money into our roads, into our water and sewage, and left them in a state other than the crisis state in which they have been for years. Have you managed to
persuade the Commission to do anything differently, though?
I've managed to persuade many communities to take up the funding which was available to them, because when I became an MEP, one of the scandals of peace funding was its gross discrimination against the majority unionist community. And happily, I've been able to see those figures improve by working with and encouraging Protestant groups throughout the Protestant community to apply for funding. Now, they haven't got all they deserve, they haven't got all that they need, and they haven't got all that makes up the deficit of discrimination to which they were subjected, but it's a lot better, and I believe because of my efforts, it's a lot better.
Diane Dodds, have you any experience of peace funding? I mean, does it exacerbate the problem, as some people think?
Well, there are certainly a number of difficulties with peace funding. Peace funding, of course, is administered through SEUPB, at which I understand MEPs can join the monitoring committees where the decisions in relation to funding are actually made. However, can I also say,
this is typical of the lack
wait a second.
Perhaps we should.
We'll let you back in a minute. Diane Dodds.
Perhaps we should allow some authority from the chair here. Can I also say, yes, there has been an imbalance in funding towards certain communities. And many of those communities over the past 10 years in the city of Belfast, I have stood beside, worked with and shared their frustration in relation to the peace funding. Can I say that the current regulations and rules in relation to Peace 3 currently, I believe, do not help many Protestant disadvantaged communities within the city because of the insistence of cross-community activity within those. Many of those communities, for example, I was in Kilcooly the other day, many of those people there say we need to be able to build up our own infrastructure, we need to be able to focus on intra-community relations before we can then focus on inter-community relations.
Okay, respond to Jim Allister's point.
And we need all of those things to happen in order to get benefit. Can I just add another thing?
I want
to add another thing in relation...
Just respond to that point before we miss it again.
I want to add another thing in relation to the infrastructure...
You asked for authority from the chair, I'm giving it. Would you, Jim Allister, what was the point you wanted to make to Diane?
That Diane was totally wrong when she said that MEPs had the opportunity to sit on the monitoring committees that oversee peace funding. And it's an indication of the total lack of knowledge about how these things work. MEPs have no right. They have a right to send. They have a right to send an observer. And my office has been represented at every meeting of every monitoring committee since I came into office. We have no rights of audience, no rights to be present. But there are people who have, because each of the four main parties, DUP included, are entitled to be there. The tragedy is that month after month after month, the DUP representatives never turn up and let the thing go by default.